This will be a day long remembered. Now I am the master.
Welcome to another episode of Legends and Theories, and welcome to the second week of the Arrowverse Weekly Review, where I'll be going over Season 4, Episode 4 of Black Lightning, Season 2, Episode 6 of Batwoman, the Season 7 premiere of The Flash, and Season 1, Episode 2 of Superman and Lois. For this video, I will be briefly going over the two shows that I have no general interest in, being Batwoman and Black Lightning, and then spend more time and to going Superman and Lois and The Flash. And I will go in by order of release. With Batwoman, I didn't really enjoy the episode, and this brought up something that I realized was a problem I had with the show so far, at least this season, and I didn't really address it last week, but it's that the Batsuit is completely indestructible, and I don't think that's ever been true. It's been acting like the Batsuit's made out of Beskar armor, and I don't think that's ever been accurate in comics. And in more realistic approaches, I mean, some of them aren't even realistic, like the Arkham series. The Batsuit takes major damage throughout those. And of course it does that in other Batman movies. It just seems very odd that on the Arrowverse it is made to be almost completely indestructible. And I don't think that Batman would make the weakness be kryptonite. Mainly because he always carries around kryptonite just in case he has to fight Superman when he's in around Metropolis or around the Man of Steel with the Justice League. That's just one thing that I feel like doesn't make any sense. And they could have found a better way to have a weakness to the Batsuit that wasn't kryptonite. And of course, I think that this show has just been not that good for me. I definitely get that there are some people who enjoy it, but like I said last week, I wouldn't be surprised if the show was cancelled because of the extreme drop in viewership. Although I don't love Black Lightning, I still think it's a pretty good show. It's just not one that's definitely for me. And while watching it, I think the latest episode was pretty interesting. And I enjoy how all the characters are definitely going through their own problems. And you're able to see the problems behind being superheroes and what it costs to people. And I think the show is pretty good overall. It's just something I don't enjoy that much, because I'm not that invested into the show. Now it's time to go into The Flash. And man, what an episode that was. Starting out right from the beginning, that was an amazing opening, where the Flash went after Mirror Master, the second one, as she killed the first one. And we saw that the Top was arrested after, as she was acting very saddened by the death of her boyfriend. But we later learned that she was only doing an act, and I wonder why she got arrested, and if that was part of Mirror Master's plan. After that, we learned that from Nash, talking to the other wells that are in his head, we learned the only way to power the artificial speed force would lead to Nash's death, and Nash, not ready to die yet, lies to Team Flash, telling him that Allegra's abilities will be able to take the particles out of him and power the artificial speed force. This plan fails, and we get one of the funniest parts of the episode, where Barry takes on the Wells into his mind and gets to play each Wells that we've seen each season, besides Thawne from Season 1. I think that Grant Gustin did an amazing job playing all the Wells, but my favorite had to be Wells the Gray, and I definitely want to see him return one day. We then learn that the main plan of Eva right now is to take down all of Black Hole, and she places a bomb upon one of Black Hole's last planes, which is flying over Central City, which puts an extreme timeline into Team Flash to be able to disarm it. And Barry is dying because of the Wells is stuck in his head, and once his speed runs out, he will automatically die due to all of the Wells in his head. So Allegra and Chester are able to create a magnet to pull the personalities back into Nash, and once they complete that, Nash and the Council of Walls inside of his head all decide to sacrifice their lives to power the artificial speed force, and as they are dying, each Wells, in reverse order, goes and says their goodbyes to Barry, starting with Nash, going to Sherlock, or Sherlock, however he wants you to say it. Then we go to HR, which is the greatest surprise of the episode. Even though he appeared earlier, I am surprised that HR was able to appear since he died far before Crisis ever happened. And that makes me think that this happened to all Welleses, where the dead Wells would have been able to go into a collective consciousness. And we only really noticed this after Crisis happened, because somebody died and they were able to go into one Wells. And then we continue on to our final one with Harry Wells giving his final goodbye to Barry and thanking him for all he has done. And this scene was probably the most emotional, with Harry being the oldest Wells and the one that we've seen the most of, with him being the main Wells for 2 seasons of The Flash, as he finally tells Barry to run. Barry, run. Barry finally runs and gets repowered by the artificial speed force, and is easily able to defeat Eva's plan and stops the plane from being destroyed, and it is all eventually confiscated by Argus. We finally go on to Eva, who learns that the original Eva died in the particle accelerator explosion, and that she is the mirror duplicate, which I don't think makes that much sense, since I thought that she would have had to be the one going into the mirror and she wouldn't have just been thrown out. I think that the mirror duplicate might be the one that have died, and they're just trying to confuse us, but it could be true, and this could be the mirror duplicate, who is now having to realize that they're a real person, and possibly die because they cannot last that long in the real world. Also, the one thing that I didn't really like about this episode, well, there was 2 things. The one more minor one was that the retcon of the original Mirror Master being created by this new one. I really feel like that wasn't really necessary. It could have just been her trying to eliminate him because he was a threat to her plans. And I'm not really sure how I would think of that, but I definitely don't like that at least Cisco wasn't back for this episode to be there when the Wells died, since Cisco always had a connection with these Wells. And I understand why Caitlin was not able to be there, because they would have to change the plot a lot for her to return, since this was mainly filmed before the COVID stuff happened, and she was on paternity leave at the time, so she was not able to film, but they could have tried to make a change in the script, but that might have been too extreme to happen right now, and they have a better plan for her in the future. But since Cisco is supposed to return next episode, he definitely could have been back for this episode to be able to see the Wells die. There was one piece of hope I saw, and that was in an article I was looking at last night after seeing the episode of The Flash, wondering about it, that said that they may have Wells return in some way, so they could have a final scene with Cisco, because they said that definitely needs to happen. So it looks like there might be a chance of them returning. And I almost forgot to mention Iris' story in this, since the other part was such more interesting than this, which isn't really an insult on that. It was a very interesting thing to see with Barry getting the artificial speed force created and all this Wells stuff happening. With Iris, we just learned that Eva is trying to break her down because she's close to figuring out how to escape the Mirrorverse, and she sends an email out to the real world, which the trailer to the next episode shows works. Finally, going on to Superman and Lois. We definitely have an interesting episode here. It was definitely about as interesting and crazy as The Flash, although it was not as emotional since we have not been connected with most of these characters for that long. So we begin with the move to Smallville, and look at how everyone's lives are beginning to change. So going with the most simple one first, we learn that Jonathan has been losing a lot of respect and is being very disrespected in the football field because of what Jordan did in the last episode. He's treated very poorly by the rest of the players. Lois is looking more into Morgan Edge, and because of how he is so bad of a person and changing her stories when she writes them about him, she quits from the Daily Planet to be able to work at the Smallville Gazette, or whatever it's called. I don't really remember, and I don't really feel like looking at it, so don't go and say anything in the comments. The most important thing about the individual members of the family, well, at least it's not individual, it's the two of them to be together, is when Clark takes Jordan to the Fortress of Solitude to be able to learn about his history of Kryptonian origin, and we eventually learn that his genetic potential being taken down by his human genetics makes Jordan not as powerful as Clark and will not be able to get the abilities that he does have, which really disappoints him. And these stories eventually come together, with Jonathan being very jealous of Jordan getting all this attention and having to make all these changes in his life for him. But they are able to reconcile that, at least for now, at the end of the episode. But going to the part that most people care about in a superhero series, the fighting, Superman takes on Captain Luthor twice in this episode. The first time, he easily destroys him, but he is able to distract Clark by setting a bomb in his ship that he sends towards Metropolis. So he is forced to leave and Luthor is able to escape. The second time, he is attacking the DoD, so he could eventually get to General Sam Lane because he wants to make an ally out of him, since they were allies on his Earth, but I'll go into that in a minute. Superman then goes down to beat Luthor, but he realizes that it's just an empty suit, and there is no one in it, and Captain Luthor is forced to lose all of his resources, and needs to find more to be able to complete his plan. We finally learn why he is so hateful of Superman, and we learn that on his Earth, his Superman turned evil, or was evil from the start, and they were in a World War S situation, which just basically means World War Superman, and it was since like his entire world against the Man of Steel, and he was devastating the planet, and eventually led to the death of everyone on the planet. And I think that Clark might have possibly destroyed the Earth on that planet, or universe, and that might be why he was able to survive Crisis, because his Earth was already destroyed, so the antimatter wave did not go to that universe, and he was eventually able to make it to the Prime Earth after all of the changes from Crisis happened. And of course, there are two very interesting ways to be able to do this storyline. The first is to do just a crime syndicate version of it. And if you're watching my playthrough of LEGO DC Supervillains, you would definitely understand what the crime syndicate is and what they do. That's because that game is very focused on them. And of course, a mystery villain. Of course, I know who it is, and I'm pretty sure you'll be able to figure out who it is too if you've been watching it or have played the game before, since it's not a brand new game. But of course, if you look at it, that's one way to do it. And there's another way to do it, which I think is way more interesting, which would be to do the Injustice version of it, which was already referenced back in the first episode of the series, where they were playing Injustice 2, which is very odd to do, since the way Injustice works is when the Joker tricks Superman into killing Lois Lane and their unborn child. He goes, let's just say, crazy, becomes a dictator, and takes over the Earth. And I definitely think this would be a way more interesting way to do it, to know why Captain Luthor is saying that he is not yet like his Kal-El, but soon will be. And I am really excited for next week's episode of Superman and Lois and The Flash. Thank you for watching this episode of Legends and Theories, and may the Force be with you.